Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm gonna talk about a prediction I made previously that looked like it was wrong, but now it might be circling around back again that it was right. We're gonna talk about Kamala Harris. We're gonna talk about the Danish people, and we're gonna talk about Jim Gaffigan. What? Let's jump into this. All right. So basically, I did an entire. I have a hyper sensitive memory for anything I've done a video on, and the reason why is when I get to the point where I'm doing a video, I am talking about that thing because it's been percolating in my mind for a little while. I've been thinking, okay, I want to talk about this. What are my thoughts on this? So I collect my thoughts on a thing, and then they percolate for a little while, and then they come out the other side of that percolation as a hot cup of Scott Garibay political commentary, right? And I did a video, and I can remember it clearly. It's probably between a year and a half ago, and it was about a comment that Jim Gaffigan made about Kamala Harris, right? And when Jim Gaffigan made the comment, I was so stunned by the oddness of it and the probability for it to turn out to be true, that I immediately just paid attention, and I made an entire video on it because I thought it was so unusual. So what did Jim Gaffigan say back then, right, in this previous video I had done? Well, he said that he travels the world, and he was on tour, and he was talking to Danish people, and he was talking about American politics, and I love listening to Jim Gaffigan. I think he's brilliant. He's one of my I think he's my second favorite. He is my second favorite comedian. My favorite comedian is Dave Chappelle. I think he's the funniest. I think he's the smartest comedian alive. Right? He's just so outrageously funny, and also witty and super intelligent. Like, just incredibly intelligent. And I think Jim Gaffigan is second. I really like Jim Gaffigan. Both of those guys, I've watched every single special they've ever made. So I've heard all their prime material, right? And Jim Gaffigan, the reason why I pay attention to Jim Gaffigan is he's a globally famous comedian. Now, guess what? Why do I listen to globally famous comedians? Because they're smart, right? I have a hierarchy of communication, and when anything within that hierarchy of communication is emanating information to me, I listen, and I pay very close attention. So I'll give you the hierarchy. First and foremost is the Holy Bible. Nothing in I read the Holy Bible as diligently as I can. I read it at least 2-3 times a week on a bad week, and on a good week, I'm in it every single day, right? And I've read the Bible multiple times, and it is the most valuable form of communication that exists on earth to me, right? There's nothing that's more important. Because it is my opinion that the Holy Bible, really what you're listening to is the whole Old Testament is just a radiation is a forwarding echo, like a time travel prediction of Christ, right? Then Christ shows up, and every word he said, I think every word that Christ said is for every person at all time, right? Like, the things that he say just kind of radiate out from history. There's so much wisdom and so much impact from them. And then in addition to that, there's the Holy Spirit, which interprets those words, right? So nothing in the world, means more to me than the communication that's coming out of the Holy Bible. Second, I would say, is my pastor, right? And the only reason I listen to him is the Bible says, hey, there's going to be these churches where I'm going to put into position one person to deliver doctrinal teaching from this word I've given you, and you are given commands to listen to that person, and also I will, God will be giving special protections, and will set up kind of a structure around these people so that their words can flow forward and will be a blessing to everyone, right? It will be a blessing to people, right? So my pastor, right, because he's connected to the Holy Bible so closely by the promises in the Word, it's really important. Second one is my wife, right? So I love my wife. I've been married coming up on 30 years, and I just love her to death. And and so I listen to her because it's incredibly important to me to hear what she has to say. the other thing, and here's the last one: smart people. So the fourth group on my hierarchy of information is smart people. I listen to smart people closely, right? If I have clues that you are smart or hyper smart, right, I will listen to you incredibly closely, right? And I'll think, okay, I'm gonna give a lot of thought to what you said, right? And here's the thing: if you're a global comedian, a globally famous comedian, you are hyper smart. Period. There's no exception to this, right? There are no Kevin Hart, globally famous, and hyper smart. Dave Chappelle, hyper smart. Jim Gaffigan, hyper smart. I'm not sure there are many active comedians today who are globally famous, right? And I'm talking brick wall and a microphone, like the old school comedians, who really don't need anything more than a mic to get people laughing, right? So they're hyper smart. So I was listening to Jim Gaffigan, and Jim Gaffigan said that he was touring and he was talking to a group of Danish people, and they were talking about American politics. And he said, and I love this, I always love hearing this, that really Europeans and almost anywhere you go, they want to talk about American politics, right? Like almost every country on the planet cares more about American politics than they do their own politics, right? And the reason why is America's just so powerful, right? And we bring so many joyful things to the world that the rest of the world is just really, really interested in our politics, right? So he said he was having a discussion about American politics, and this was during the time where you had like 20 people running for the Democrat U.S. presidential primary slot, right, to be the nominee, right? At this point, Joe Biden was just one in the pack, right? And this Danish person said to Jim Gaffigan, he said, hey, why are you guys paying so much attention to all this, why is there so much coverage of this? Why does everybody watch all these silly debates? This is already decided. We already know who the nominee is going to be. The president, the next president of the United States of America, is already chosen by the powers that be, right? So this Danish person says to Jim Gaffigan, I know who your next president's going to be, right? And Jim Gaffigan's like, what? Who is it, right? And he goes, oh, it's Kamala Harris. It's so clear, right? Like, she's the one, right? She's going to be the next president of the United States of America. And so Jim Gaffigan reported this on essentially like an interview he was doing. And he said he was really surprised by it. I think he was on Rogan. I think he was being interviewed by Joe Rogan. And so he said this on Rogan, and about a year and a half ago, right? And Jim Gaffigan goes like, wow, and Jim Gaffigan says, I remember this Danish person saying this to me because he was so confident and so sure, right? So I did a whole video on this, and I'm like, hey, this could be a source of truth. Why would this be a source of truth? Why would Jim Gaffigan reporting what a Danish person said to him be a source of truth? Well, here's why. One, Jim Gaffigan doesn't really have a dog in the fight, right? Like, politics are not his main thing. He's going to be able to make his living whether it's Democrats in office or Republicans in office. It really doesn't matter, right? His life is going to be very unaffected by whoever gets in office. So one, he didn't really have any reason to lie. Jim Gaffigan didn't have any reason, in my opinion, to lie about this. So he's got stance. He has kind of a hedge of protection around himself where he's not invested, right? So I'm more willing to listen to him. And then, why did I believe the Danish person? Well, Jim Gaffigan is he's hyper intelligent. And when he tours, it's so clear, right? Like Jim Gaffigan, his whole life now revolves around, like every globally famous comedian now, his whole life revolves around the special, right? They drop a special every year and a half, every 2 years at most, right? And all they do is they just tour, they take notes, and they work their content. They work their content like crazy. They're really, really hyper. They're super honed in on creating this really strong, solid hour, like this half an hour of content, right? And then bang, they drop it. And when they drop it, right, now there's a huge market for this. What's the market for these? Well, it's Amazon Prime is paying for them. Not much, but Amazon Prime is one of the major players, right? They're buying them, right? Amazon Prime and then Netflix, right there. Those two will bid each other up, right? They, right there is those two competitors will drive the value up It is reported that Netflix has paid $60 million for a set. They paid Chappelle like $60 million for 2 or 3 specials that all came out at the same time. It was kind of like it's really one set, but they split it up just for marketing purposes. So the reality is, the market for this could be 5, 10, 20, 50, maybe even somebody's going to break the record and go to $75 million for a single special. That's huge. That is a ton of money, right? So the reality is right now, Gaffigan's he's just rolling around like a king, man. He's got everything he needs. And the reality is he doesn't need to, like, when he takes the time to sit down and talk to some Danish people, he doesn't need to talk to just any knucklehead. He can talk to smart people. He can talk to the people he wants to, right? And so I'm like, this hyper smart person is going to talk to other smart people. And so when I heard it, I was like, what a really strange thing to say, that Kamala Harris would be the next president, right? And that she was already chosen by the powers that be, right? And so then, everything happened. Biden becomes the nominee. Bernie gets swept aside like flotsam, right? And I'm like, oh, well, Gaffigan was completely wrong. Was he? Was that Danish person that Jim Gaffigan talked to, were they wrong? Look at how it flows out, right? There is a probability that Joe Biden could win in the fall. I think it's 1%, right? But Joe Biden's got a better percentage chance of anybody in America beating Trump than anybody else. He's the nominee, right? So there is a possibility he could win. I don't think it's high. I think it's a very low probability. But he could win. It's possible. I've always said that, right? I actually think it's 99.1%. I think 99% chance Trump is going to win. But hey, I play D&D. You roll the 0-0 die. You roll the 0, the D10 and the D100s. You roll 2 10-sided dice to create a 0-1 to 100 probability. And if that thing hits 0-0-0, that's 100. That's it. Biden's in, right? Now, if Biden gets in, I can tell you right now, there's virtually no possibility that that Biden is going to last 4 years. He can't make it through a friendly interview nowadays, right? How's he going to make it through 4 years when he's like 83? He would be 83 in his first term, right? And it's clear too, right? This is going to be in a pandemic. It's going to be one of the hardest times to be president ever, right? In a nation that is split over culture, split over the pandemic, split over everything. There's more partisanship than has ever existed in America since the Civil War. Of course, the partisanship was so high then that it boiled over and we had a war, right? So you can't say that our partisanship is higher now than it was during the Civil War. Clearly, partisanship was higher during the Civil War than it is now, right? That actually erupted into animosity, right? But we have very, very high partisanship. It's going to be outrageously hard for the president to be president. And so if Biden gets in, this will grind him like a nub, right? And the reality is, I looked at Bernie Sanders, I watched him closely, and I thought he was much more well prepared to handle the rigors of what it would be to be president. And it's very clear that that just running for president broke Bernie, and he ended up with a terrible, terrible circumstance that happened where he was, he ended up being, having a heart attack. And, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And he had to be back in his, back running a week and a half later. Like, it was, not even a fortnight passed before before Bernie had to be back at the work that he was doing, right? So it was really, really incredible, everything that was happening. So, so basically, it really was an incredibly shocking turn of events. So here we are. All these things are happening, right? And so if Biden gets in, there's almost no possibility he's going to finish a 4-year term. I think what will happen is, I think the job is going to start wearing him down, and I think within 3 to 9 months, he will just. I don't think anything bad's going to happen to him. He's going to say, I thought I could do this. I was wrong. I'm stepping down because the job is just too much. Now, there's tons of precedents for this, right? There have been major national leaders who are doing exactly this right now, right? And international leaders who are just saying, hey, I'm giving up this position right in the middle of the position because it's just too hard to do it. It's too much to ask for one person. And I think it's exactly how it's going to roll out with Biden. He'll give up the position. There you go, Kamala Harris, the Danish person who talked to Jim Gaffigan. The Danish Jim Gaffigan prophecy, prediction turns out to be 100% right? So here we are. There was this prediction, and I said, "Oh yeah, I think Gaffigan's right." And then for a microsecond, I thought I was wrong because I was like, "Oh, Kamala Harris, nowhere in sight. She dropped out. Doesn't have a chance." But here we are. We're back. And it does look like, just like that Danish person said to Jim Gaffigan, and just like Jim Gaffigan said to Joe Rogan, here we are. Here we are. What a small, strange, wild world we live in, right? And where predictions can be so, they can seem like they're spinning out so that they're not going to come into position, but then very, very quickly just spins right back and drops right into position. Oh, that's my opinion. What do you think? Why do you think it came around that Danish person's prediction has now circled back? Do you think that the powers that be were excited about Kamala Harris, and that maybe the Blue Power base and other groups as well really pulled a lot of strings, or actually not specific? I don't think there was any kind of I think overall the DNC has the ability to try to angle for one person to get in. And so, how do you think Kamala Harris got to the position where a Danish person's prediction given to Jim Gaffigan, given to Joe Rogan, could come in and be a source of truth? How do you think we got here? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.